Welcome to the Lucy in the Sky with Dinahs series, where Natasha discusses psychedelic-assisted therapy within high-demand religious context of sexual and religious trauma. Natasha is joined by Aimee Rossi and Aimee Heffernan. Note that neither Natasha or the Amies are doctors. They do not condone illegal behavior. Please make sure you know your local and state laws before using psychedelics. Go to learnreligiontherapy.com for upcoming CE information. Welcome to the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can also find all her core resources at natashahelfer.com. The information shared on this program is informational and should not be considered therapy. This podcast addresses many topics around mental health and sexuality and may not be suitable for minors. Some topics may elicit a trigger or emotional response, so please care for yourself accordingly. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer Podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes is by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Natasha Helfer podcast series, Lucy in the Sky with Dinahs, where we talk about psychedelics, sex, and religion. Can it really get any more fun than that intersection? Sometimes I'm just like, I love my job. Anyway, we would love to hear your comments and questions throughout this whole experience. And if you happen to ask a question, I'll be looking and we might answer it even today. So feel free to share in the threads so we can address them either live or in future episodes. We also usually like to say that although we are talking about the intersection of psychedelics and mental health and even sexual health, we are not here to tell you to do any type of medicine or to do anything that is not considered legal wherever you are geographically. Like this is informational, and you are to use this information if you feel it's applicable and go talk to your providers and your people about how this may or may not be a good fit for you and for whatever reason. So anything either one of you, Amy's, want to add to that disclaimer?
I feel you did a great job.
Okay.
Right. We're here and excited to talk.
All right, we're here and excited to talk. And just as a quick announcement, the three of us will be doing an upcoming training, primarily meant for mental health professionals, but really anybody's welcome to join us. And it's going to be on November 7th, and it is going to be on this intersection of how to use psychedelics within the constructs of like religious trauma, sexual trauma. We're going to do a deeper dive of our 1 hour CE, which we did offer for free on the Learn Religion Therapy platform. And that is available now as a recording. We did it live and we had a nice group join us for that. And we're now going to go into a deeper dive, a 3 hour CE. So we're excited to offer that on November 7th. And you can go to learnreligiontherapy.com to register for that. And I'll make sure and put the registration in the links.
Can I do an additional plug?
Yes.
Okay, so therapists that are listening, like every year your birthday comes and you're like, oh no, I gotta have my CEs. And like you want to put money into your CEs that are like interesting and like fun and new. And like, I mean, if you've been a therapist for years and years, you're like, I gotta get something new for my brain. So I'm just like wanting to offer us, like consider us to say, we're gonna get a 3 hour CE. I promise you, my friends are so smart and interesting and that it will be worthwhile. You'll at least leave learning something that you didn't know before. I'm going to say that. So come join us. We're a good time. We would love you to learn and conversate with us and be a part of it. So I'm going to say thanks, Natasha. And I'm just going to give an extra Aimee Hef plug to say, come spend your CE money on us. Will be worth it. Okay, that's all.
I think I want to make an extra plug too then.
Let's do it. Let's just plug away.
Yeah, I want to give a plug to the facilitators out there who are the underground facilitators who work within this sphere of religion, sexual trauma, it does come up. This would be a wonderful class to take. You do not have to be a therapist, but we are going to touch on this intersection and these themes. So as one who works in the underground knows, especially here in Salt Lake Valley, themes of post-religion, religious trauma, and sexual trauma comes up. So yeah, if you're a facilitator working in the underground, this would be a great way to continue working and educating yourself around these spaces and how to be the safest, ethical, and most effective facilitator possible. So that's my plug for the underground.
Yes.
Okay, I love it. We welcome everyone to come and learn. And the official name of the course, I finally found it, is Sacred Disruption, an in-depth look into psychedelic-assisted therapy within high-demand religious context of sexual and religious trauma. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, and we're having it both live and hybrid Zoom. So if you're not in the area, you can join us. But if you are in the area, because here in Utah, you need so many CEs that are live, this is a good way to get those before the end of the year. All right. Without further ado, what are we talking about tonight?
Okay.
Oh, friends of mine.
Should I introduce or does Aimee and Rossi want to introduce?
One of you introduce, because although I think I just want to be very disclosure-esque, I started this meeting before we started recording with my own like, I'm dealing with so, and then the two Amies came in and I'm like, they were like, we should talk about this on the podcast. So what are we talking about?
So what we're talking about is these imprints that we all get as little humans that land into families and land into systems and all the things. And oftentimes we've got just full of stories of patterns, of relational patterns, of internal patterns, of all kinds of, I would say, deep imprinted wiring. And when you grow up in a high demand religion, or you convert to a high demand religion, there is a certain kind of wiring that happens when you are there. There's beautiful things in there. Yay. And then there's okay things, and then there's like shadowy things, and there's like, ooh, that's stinky, like I say, ooh, Solbio on that, So what we were all talking about is what are some of the things that we personally have been wrestling with around some of the hard wiring that we got inside each of us, and how psychedelic therapy has helped kind of shake some of those loose, and or maybe even currently like alive in us that we're trying to be human or pattern in a different way than what was imprinted or deeply wired in. Okay. So that was a long way of saying what I was saying, but Aimee, do you want to pithy it for me?
Yes, okay. Of course I'd love to. So, as the listeners know, or who are interested in psychedelics are a great tool to use when we're trying to look at and maybe confront some of this, what I would call conditioning, right? Where we're conditioned to a certain thought pattern or belief pattern, right? And we can go to traditional therapy, and if we've got a good therapist, they can help us self-confront around, what are just thought patterns and what we've laid down as belief patterns, and just even ways of thinking and being in the world. We're programmed or conditioned, especially in high demand religion, to be what we were talking about earlier, very externally referenced, right? And I'll speak from my own high demand religion, which is the LDS faith or Mormonism. I feel like I was hardwired to not only with a high demand religion, but maybe a high demand family too, where there's a lot of expectation. There is a better way to be than another way. And so I had to figure out what that way was. And in Mormonism, we're given this manual, how to be, right? There's the right way. Here's the script, right? And a lot of that was you need to obey. It was obedience was a huge thing in high demand religion. And if you want to get to a certain place in the afterlife, you've got to obey. And there's a right way and there's a wrong way to be. And so you're oriented toward these rules or these expectations, right? And I call them being externally referenced. You're externally referenced to a set of rules, or maybe it's your parents, or maybe it's the bishop, the stake president. Maybe it's just the deity that's outside of you, the Godhead God, right? Jesus, whatever it is, you're trying to do the way that you were told to be. And what that does then is creates us to be oriented to the outer, What are people expecting of me? We may be unconsciously looking for validation, belonging, right? In order to do these things, you belong. In order to do these things, you will get to this place in this next life, right? And that then creates and lays down these patterns of conditioning and belief where we don't check inward. We're not internally reference of what is right for me and best for me. We are told the best way to show up, and then that kind of lays down a pattern of, rather than internally checking in with what it feels right and best for us, we have to externally orient. And that is something that's not easily left behind when you just realize that something is, a church is no longer for you anymore, right? You can set aside the doctrinal beliefs, but then still carry out into your regular life this orientation to the external, to how should I be? How should I show up? These expectations, whether that's high demand family or high demand religion, or how they often too go together. So I think that's kind of what we're talking about today, about how therapy, yes, can help with that. But psychedelics are also a really great tool with the neuroplasticity when somebody's coming in to kind of particularly look at, how do I rewire myself from being externally oriented to being more internally oriented? So I think that's kind of what we're talking about today. And so we're going to deep dive it, talk about it from different angles, what we've seen in our own clients, what we've seen in our own practices, but also how we've addressed that within ourselves as well.
Yeah. I like it. That's a hot topic.
So both of you did a really good job of brainiacking that. Should I share a little bit so we can talk about the like how this lands as far as an experience? I don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. So my story goes something like this. I've decided I'm a therapist. As you were all talking, I'm like, I don't think I just come from a high demand religion or even a high demand family. I think I come from a high demand profession.
Okay.
I think the world of therapy is a high demand profession.
I agree. Okay. I like that you're sharing this.
Right?
Okay.
We hold each other to high level, high standards.
Yeah. Do no harm.
Do no harm. Know your stuff. Do your own work.
Be safe.
Be safe. Yeah, like all the things, right? That are really important. I'm not saying it shouldn't be a high demand profession. And at the same time, it kind of mimics a lot of the things that you were both just talking about, as you were talking about expectations and hardwiring and all these things. And so what I'm noticing in my week of things this week is that, so I'm presenting this week, I'm giving a 2-day presentation on the topic of religious trauma. That is not an easy thing to be talking about, especially to a group of professionals that come from a wide variety of spaces, both geographically and also religiously themselves. I have everybody from people who are very involved in their religious communities and even consider themselves like spiritual practitioners or Christian therapists or whatever terms they might use within their faith communities. And of course, people who have left religion, have felt harmed by religion, and people who've never been religious, but they want to know how to work within this population. So as I'm gathering all this information from my attendees, I'm very aware that, okay, my material for some folks may land very, very neutral. It might just be informational for them. For other people in my training, it might land very personally, like, wow, this really resonates and it might affect, this is how I was affected. And then for some people, it may land defensively, like, what do you mean, religion can harm in these ways when I find so much strength or so much value in my own religious identity? And I'm sure all of that was showing up. I had a great group of people and I'm still going to be meeting with them tomorrow. And as typically happens, so this is not so much about my group. My group is great. Yeah. But this is about a theme that I have found in my life, which is why we're talking about recurring patterns, right? And things that I've taken to therapy 500,000 times and I talked to my colleagues about, and things that at this point, this is my expectation of myself. I'm like, Natasha Helfer, if this kind of thing bothers you, it should bother you for about 15 to 20 minutes. That would be reasonable. It would be unreasonable for it not to bother you at all, but it should bother you about 15 to 20 minutes. And then it's what time? 8:00 at night. I got some feedback at about 4:00 this afternoon. So it's been now officially 4 hours. And I see no change in my processing about it.
And you're ruminating.
In my ruminating, in my this core piece, like right here between my neck and my, what is this called? I was going to call it a scrotum. I'm like, this is not my scrotum. I don't think I have a scrotum, people. But you know what it is? It's like an S word. I forget. But right here in between your chest bone, right? Somebody will help me out on Facebook and tell me what it is.
Sternum.
She didn't hear when you said it the first time.
I do have a sternum. Thank you.
Not a scrotum.
I can feel this, like almost like I can feel it. It's like a rectangular part of my body right here that is tight and kind of wound. And it's even now, because I'm talking about it, it's going to start my leaky eyeballs going.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's almost like this rod, like I can feel it almost like an iron rod right here, like a strong thing that's holding me up. But if I talk about it, then it's like, oh no, don't talk about it, Natasha, because then you'll get leaky. So all of that, it's, affecting my breath. So I'm trying to model like us knowing our bodies, right? And this is a very familiar feeling for me. And of course it's uncomfortable. And of course I don't like it, right? And I want it to go away. And it makes me, so basically what happened is one person out of like 30 plus people wrote me back and said that they had some feedback for me, that they were wondering if I was open to, which of course I am. I don't really know what the feedback is yet, but I could tell it was not positive, right? Like it was going to be a critique, which is great. Fine.
Feedback.
My intellectual self, my smart self, my wise self knows I actually want people to tell me, hey, this felt off for me, or this didn't land right, or quite frankly, you pissed me off, or you were offensive, or you didn't, include something. Great. That's what makes me a better presenter. But it's not landing wise, right? How is it landing? It's landing in what you were talking, Aimee, half about, like how we're wired. Right. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what are all the ways that I was wired? I was wired to pay attention and make sure other people are feeling okay, make sure people are happy with me, make sure I'm doing a good job, make sure I'm worthy and righteous and good girl so I can get into heaven type stuff. Right. And so I was wired to be very hypersensitive to being liked, right? To being approved of, to being found worthy, right? And so that's where that long rectangular thing.
Hold to the rod, the worthy rod. Okay, I love that you identified all this.
So that's a little bit of insight. So I'm just, not that you all need to know all this information about me, but this is how it shows up in our lives. This is when we're talking brainy, I'm talking about, okay, well, I'm living it right this second, people. So let's talk about that. So what's coming up for the two of you as I share my woes?
I've got something if you don't.
You go, girl. Yeah.
Okay. So what's coming up for me is something that I think I maybe talked about it on the last episode, but it bears repeating because it was a really important psychedelic experience for me. And this last time I sat, one of my questions was, which I think is related to this, how do this is a big question for psychedelics, but as a depth psychologist, the psyche is always oriented toward wholeness. And so my question was, how do I live into wholeness? Because that's hard. It's hard to live into our wholeness, because I'm really good when I'm showing up well and right, and I'm pleasing people, and I'm, smart, and I'm seen as the expert. But how do I hold and tolerate within myself when I don't show up my best, or when I'm experiencing judgment from others, or I may not be whatever it is, right? This idea of wholeness, where you're not just good and right and worthy and all these things that we're kind of conditioned and patterned into in high demand families, or high demand religion, or high demand, you know, work that we have. How do we tolerate the messiness of humanity? Right? Where we've been like, being a human means being messy, means messing up, means not showing up well, means that people are going to criticize you, and then they're going to hurt you, and they may have feedback that's hard. Like, so that was my question for the medicine. Like, intellectually, I know how to deal with wholeness. I get that, like, I can learn from the books that I've been learning, in school, like wholeness is it. But then I came to the psychedelics because, like, I get intellectually what it means to be whole, to be able to tolerate all those other parts of ourselves. But how do I actually do it? That was my question for this. Like, how do I live into wholeness? And the medicine was just like, yeah, you have to learn to sit with these other parts of yourself, right? That being a human means having all of these. Wholeness isn't goodness. I think sometimes even in just being, we can sometimes mistake wholeness for like perfection or goodness, or being righteous or spiritual or whatever it is. And like, wholeness also involves the messiness, and also when we mess up, and it's not easy. And I think, and I don't know if it's, sometimes I like to blame it on high demand religion, but it's easy to want to be perfect, to like want to like only have people see the good side of us, even if like objectively she might not even have any negative I mean, maybe, right? But it's like, how do we tolerate,
right? Like, that's what's so silly about it, right?
Mm-hmm. She may just have say, something came up. Something came up with a family member. I can't do it, and here you've been putting yourself through this, like, hard, difficult somatic experience, but like the body just responds. It just is what it is. So that was my question. How do I do that? And since that experience, I've been realizing that so much of what healing means is, and you guys have probably said this a million times to your clients, it's actually developing the capacity to feel. And I realized that was what the psychedelics were. You've got to develop your capacity to feel people's criticism, to feel the judgment, to feel the messiness. To be in wholeness means all things belong, right? And it's like, I've realized like so much of healing, so much of it is primarily developing the capacity to sit with discomfort. Mm-hmm. And then the embodiment, the neuroplasticity comes away, and I am somehow moved out of just the intellectual knowing of like, oh, I know these things. And now I've developed the somatic capacity to feel the things. So, I would like to offer you that you've been feeling these things for 4 hours. You developed the capacity to sit with discomfort, and you're still here. You showed up for the podcast, right? You're not like
talking about it on a live podcast, even.
I mean, I would say that is emotional.
I am processing.
That's emotional intelligence. That's healing. That's like what we can ask for, is to like the idea that somehow we get to this place where we don't feel. I'm actually not into that at all. I actually, like, from a Jungian perspective, to be activated is important. It's to mean we're alive, to be in touch with the instincts and the emotions, right? That's where we see where complexes exist, right? Like, clearly there's a complex here for you, but that's not bad. It's like, how can we sit with those parts of ourselves? How can we sit with the discomfort? How can we sit with our parts of ourselves that is maybe facing that you may be disappointed somebody? How can we sit with that? Because we're not really taught that in high demand families and high demand religion. We're not taught with, you may disappoint people. We're just taught, don't disappoint people. Just be the right thing, right? And that's a completely different thing when we're talking about growing up and out of these patterns and these conditioning. So that's where the story and this conversation is taking me, that it's hard work to learn to somatically embody a different way of being. Right? That's what these medicines kind of help us to do is, can I know something, but can I embody it? Can I integrate it? Can I show up differently in my real life? When faced with the same old shit, can I show up in an embodied way? And that doesn't mean perfect. Like, wholeness means all parts of us belong, right? Including the messy parts or the imperfect parts.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to add on to that too.
Yes, yes.
No, you go respond.
Well, I can respond a little bit. I mean, what I'm noticing coming up for me, of course, which is what's so good about obviously therapy, although this is not therapy, but it's also good of good friends, which this is, and good of conversation in general, is I'm being reminded that sometimes I do think I have this expectation that if I finally figure this stuff out, I won't have these feelings as much, and that I'll have surpassed the feelings, because somehow that's a whole nother message I need to deconstruct, is that feelings, mean that you are not, if you are escalated or activated, that somehow that means you are not, what do I want to say? It's almost like calmness equates wisdom, or calmness equates maturity, which is, I think, also in a lot of the gendered messages we get, especially as women, that if we're emotional or if we're too
dysregulated,
or passionate, that somehow we're not, we're not mature, we're not wise, or we're illogical, all those messages that we get. And so
not enlightened.
What?
We're not enlightened. Like somehow,
right. Yeah, somehow, right.
The more personally developed you are, the more you won't react. And I think that's nonsense.
Yes, right. So what you're helping me remind myself right now with what you've said to me so far, Aimee, Rossi, is that, and I think about, again, the experiences I've had with different types of psychedelics. It's not that I haven't felt. It's that it's helped me put the feelings into perspective.
Yeah.
And so I'm being reminded right now in today's little thing that, why don't you, sit with that iron rod in your chest instead of being so mad that it's there to begin with. and sit with your wise self and the other parts of yourself, that are, I guess, denoting meaning out of that. But Aimee, I would love to hear your insights.
If you sit with yourself for maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and instead of just distracting from it and just sit with it, maybe it will only take 15 or 20 minutes to just feel those feelings. Do you know what I mean? Instead of having it like just be at a constant undercurrent in your soul,
Yeah.
So I always say this, I say, in order to change the dance, you have to change the stance. Like, so when we have a certain way that we're dancing through the world or just moving through the world, or by myself or with another person in any relationship of long-term partnership, like, or just little moment partnership, whatever, like, it's this question of like, I want to have internal changes on a deep level, and I need to change the way I'm like standing in the world. If I'm wanting to do the tango, but I'm like standing in like do-si-do, I'm like, this is wrong dance, like wrong music, wrong everything. And so one of my very first psychedelic experience, I like to name my experiences. Like, so this one was like, nobody's watching, that very first thing, like drop into my psyche for the first time. And I think this core download of big, like, Sky Daddy is like watching me, ancestors watching, like, I need to people please hard. I need to like make everybody like be safe and energetically okay, like for my family system and all the things, right? And so that download for me was really, really big, to say, oh my gosh, deep at the very youngest age of my little soul, I felt that there was something exterior watching me, and that I needed to validate that deity or the energy of being watched. Okay. So I often call it like the Truman Show camera, like that some people's like audience is bigger than others. Like, I'm not an influencer, but those influencers have a big audience. Or like, if you're a celebrity or like the president of the world or whatever it is, like you have an audience, and we're always trying. And from such a young age, I was told that I really needed to please that audience. I needed to make my aunts and uncles happy. I needed to make friends happy. I needed to make my husband happy. I needed to, the bishop, don't be too angry, feminist Aimee, like keep it level. Like, don't be, like just kind of like through your life, you're just constantly worrying about like that external thing. And it didn't allow me to have my own internal authority in the way that I feel like is a human right that I should have, just by waking up to consciousness and be like, I guess I'm here on a floating rock in a Mormon family this time. What? And so it's like facing the reality of like the what is of your life. Okay. And what I found in that first experience was this deep, deep belief that like someone was watching me all the time. And those cute little mushrooms, they just got in there and they were just like, Aimee, nobody's watching. You get to make your life the way you want it. And like turn down like all of the audience. Like, who am I most concerned about in the audience? Like, that lady, like, I don't even want to live in her life. Or like, why am I so worried about that? And so this is heightened. And so this is a pattern that has been hard to break for me of like, how do I come back to the home of my own belonging and get my own authority and decide that this is the conscious creation of my life and I'm weird and quirky and I'm going to say things and I'm going to like probably offend people, and people aren't going to opt in to me because they're going to think I'm offensive or I'm like too much of a angry liberal or feminist or ex-Mormon or, you know, because it was like everything along the way I thought I have to be doing it a certain way. I needed to be a good Mormon girl this way. I needed to be a sex therapist, active Mormon, liberal, progressive Mormon this way. And then when I like left the church, I was like so nervous about the consequences of the relationships around me that I wanted to make sure I ex-Mormon the right way and that I wasn't too angry because I knew that people would say that I was too angry. And so it was just this like constant worrying about the audience and about like how I'm supposed to live my life according to like what these people expected of me. And it was like, it was so debilitating to my own beautiful frequency of my soul. And so being able to arrive very gently at this beautiful place that no one was watching, it was coming back home to like my own camera. Like this is my own thing. And the stories that I was told is that wholeness came from partnership, right? And so I worked hard to like invest in that like partnership like story of my life, right? And so changing the dance. I wanted to change the dance. I deeply was saying this isn't working for me anymore. Like when I first came to psychedelics is because I was in deep burnout from this career. So high demand career at a time when like I was not prepared as emotional first responder to deal with all of the divorces and the increased conflict that happened. Like it's high and I didn't want to do harm and I wanted to do right by the clients and the cases that I had. And so, but it's too hard to hold all of that, you know? And so on a personal level, Natasha, like I get the saying, hey, why does this pattern keep like resurfacing in my life? Because it's not good for my soul anymore. It's making me sick. You know, it's like keeping me out of alignment. It's keeping me out of wholeness. And so being able to turn down the audience and like turn up my own inner intuition and my own inner knowing and get into alignment with my own nature frequency is really what the medicines have really brought to my life. And it's been important for me in my own awakening and in my own healing to be able to say like, I get this one big beautiful life on this timeline. I don't know where I think I'm more into the reincarnation belief now. I'm like, it's all made up, so I'm going to believe in reincarnation. I get different timelines, and this one is a really fun one, like peak, really fun. I like my life. I like what I get to do. I like, you know, I like my work. I like how I get to be friends and move through the world with people. And I do think that these experiences have wakened me up to say, Aimee, get aligned. You were sick. You were unwell. You were living out of reciprocity with myself and with other people and with the world. And some of those beliefs and the stories that were told to me about constantly worrying about like the audience was so beautiful to slowly turn down. It wasn't a drive-through fix. Like it's been a process to unspell some of those like curses on my soul, you know?
Right.
So that's my personal take on it. So
Yeah.
maturity. So discomfort for growth, what Aimee was saying. So kind of like just tying that back to the full circle is that we have learned to repress a lot of uncomfortable feelings. And so then when they come up into the surface, sometimes we don't know what to do with them. And so they somatically show up in different ways, like body, neck, cancer, headaches, other autoimmune illnesses, like all that kind of stuff. And so it matters. It's important work. And so thanks for sharing your vulnerable, like little, like, moment, because because the truth is I think it's easy to get self-critical on why am I still engaging in this pattern that I know is not good for me. But it's like, ugh, because when I was a little tiny girl, that was a deep root in me, and like Inside Out too, where that sense where they show the sense of self like coming up and forming. That was such a beautiful visualization of how those stories and get rooted in our identity of self.
Yeah.
And in our personalities and all that. So I believe passionately that psychedelics can kind of help us change the dance of patterns that are no longer serving us.
Well, and this is reminding me too, as we're talking about this, because I'm like, what is the point I'm trying to make tonight? Like, I have done some psychedelic assisted therapies, and I think I want to just communicate to the audience, like, it's not a one and done thing. Right? It's a modality, just like talk therapy is, that you often return to and use for a period of time or different chapters of time in your life. And I think that's when we first got on the call, I think one of the first things I said was, I think it's time for me to go back to the medicine to address this, because it is something I've brought to my talk therapy. It is something I brought to my introspection, my journaling, it's something I've brought into also, like, just what I would say, like strategies, like, okay, maybe I can try this or I can try that, and I've tried different things. And it is one of those things where, for whatever reason today, even though I'm having compassion for myself, like, it's normal. Anytime we get critical feedback, that's going to be somewhat uncomfortable. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the level, the intensity that this is showing up with me today, and also the amount of time and therefore cost it's having in my whole evening, right? Because it's affecting my whole freaking evening. And so I guess I'm trying to say all that to say that this is maybe the kind of feeling that if you resonate with this, it's like, I wonder if, and I'm not wondering, I know that if I sit with, like what I have available to me right off the bat here in Utah is ketamine, or I could go elsewhere and have other things available to me. But regardless, if I sit with one of those medicines, I will have an experience that will help loosen this for me. It doesn't mean it will magically disappear. It won't mean next time I get critical feedback, I'll be just like, la-di-da, no biggie. But it will unloosen some of what I'm noticing today is a feeling of stuckness in an old pattern, an old somatic response that's been alive and well for 53 years of my life that I can remember. And that I've made progress on, for sure, especially cognitively, especially intellectually. And I am going to count on the medicine to help me, unlodge more of this stuckness through this type of therapy as well. And this is, I guess that's what I'm getting at with the point is, it's time for me to do some more work.
With intention around this pattern specifically in your soul.
Yeah, with this particular pattern of, like when I think about the ideal, like the solution focused miracle question, right? What if I could manage this in a way that I feel would be more aligned with me, that would feel more whole, to use some of the language that you've both been using tonight. I feel like I would get feedback. I feel like in the moment I would respond respectfully to whomever is giving me the feedback. I would notice stuff come up, like anything from like, oh, wow, I really did fuck up, to fuck you, I don't think I fucked up at all. And I may have some of those. And I can keep that to myself. I don't have to express it all. And I would take some moments to allow for those initial reactions to pass, so that then I could have some more contemplative thinking, and what if any of that feedback do I really want to incorporate? And if I wasn't quite sure, I would get a second opinion, right, from trusted colleagues or friends or mentors, and say, do you think this is fair feedback that I've received? Is this something I probably do need to work on, or is this somebody else's issue that they're projecting onto me? I think those are good questions. And I would work through all of that and have a plan, and within, I don't know, a shorter amount of time, I would go have dinner with my partner or go hang out with my kids or get a good night's rest tonight instead of staying up, ruminating or whatever those things are, right? So that's my idealized version. And that idealized version doesn't mean not sitting with discomfort, but being able to manage it in a way that doesn't feel like so old pattern to me, right? Oh, so like yucky. This feels yucky. This doesn't feel productive. This type of discomfort doesn't feel like it's really useful. Maybe it is, Aimee, Rossi, you'd be like, oh, let me depth psychology you, Natasha. It's all useful. So I'm sure it is useful. And yet it's not maybe the version that I'd like to develop into as far as how to handle negative feedback.
Yeah, as you say that, with my depth psychology lens, one of the things I'm thinking about, it's coming up for me is, maybe there is something to be said. We could call or name a complex for those, certainly out of Mormonism or LDS or even high demand religion, is that there is inherent in depth psychology, we believe the psyche the construct of the psyche is building blocks, is complexes, right? And we could say that there is a worthiness complex. If you were raised in high demand religion, even if you deconstruct the religion and its truth claims, you still walk away with a worthiness complex. Am I worthy? That will constantly, in all kinds of different ways, depending on the situation, especially with feedback, right? And so then how do we, that's, I think, what we're kind of talking about. How do we unwind? And it shows up in lots of ways. For some people, I think, has a flavor of good girl. I think for other people, it will like pick me, right? How do we, because the religion and high demand religion is rooted in worthiness that we talked about, right? To get to this kingdom or to get into this building, you have to be this level of expectation worth. And just because the truth claims of something are not real when you walk away, how do you unwind that? How do you unwind that is an intense thing to unwind, which is why neuroplasticity can help with that. Psychedelics can help you to unwind how and why the worthiness complex may be constellated, and how do we kind of quiet that down or look at it from a different perspective, or how we can intellectually know I'm worthy, like what we're talking about. I know I have worth. I know my worth is not dependent on how I behave and all this stuff. I'm inherently worthy. But this is where the psychedelics can step in and help us to see our worth from a new perspective, from soul, the perspective of soul. And then that's something that you then can't unknow, And I think that worthiness complex is pernicious. It's pernicious. And it pops up anytime someone gives me feedback. Like you, my son was giving me feedback before I got on this call. And I was like, oh, because you want to be the good mom. You want to be the good girl. We want to do things well. And I think that's inherently a good intention to have. How do we deal with this intention of being good with bump up with the messiness of what it means to be human, and how we have impact, even unintentional impact, and then how do we hold those two things or all those parts of ourselves when we're raised in a way that says there is one or better right way to be, that's something we all, if we really want to deconstruct intentionally and consciously, we have to look at that worthiness complex inside of us. And it's a privilege to get to look at it, and it's hard work. And I think it's one of those things that we will all be unwinding for a long time to come. And psychedelics can help, to be supportive in that process.
There's a right way to be happy. We must always choose the right. I forgot how it goes, but it's basically those words, right? And that is I sang that over and over and over again when I was little, right? Of hey, there's a right way to be happy, and I need to choose the right way. And if I don't choose that way, then hell and damn fire will lightning, or my ancestors will be watching me touch my pleasure parts. It's a lot of scariness in that.
I was afraid of this idea, wailing and gnashing of teeth, there was consequences to not being worthy, right? Or being happy the right way. What a phrase for our
eternity of like gnashing my teeth. Like that is a miserable existence, you know?
outer darkness. Like who wants to be alone?
No loud laughing.
No loud laughing. There are a lot of threats for us to fall in line for that worthiness complex to get really juicy and big.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a juicy big complex for the band religions.
For the Exmos to unwind, and the Mormons, I hope they unwind that too. But you know, it's big, pernicious.
Yeah. And it's coupled with the "we're so special" complex too. So that's a really very, very, like, we're the chosen generation. Like there's a lot of we're very special. And so it's so complicated because we're so special, but we've got to be so worthy too. So
yeah, it's interesting. I've not thought about different religions having their own unique complexes because that's the framework I have. But I can see how they do. Like, you know, for example, when I've worked with people who came from high demand Catholic families, there is their own, there's like a complex I often see where they have this like, they need to profess, they need to like the guilt is moving them to like, I have to proclaim all my sins, where I feel like that's different than the Mormons that I've worked with in the past. Like it is interesting to see the different flavors of like, and the high demand, you know, I've worked with a few like Hasidic Jews where there's a lot of rules, right? There is indifferent, and following those rules is even different than the worthiness thing. Like that they feel different, right? And so knowing that anytime you're deconstructing your belief system, there's going to be unique things to unlock.
I always say like the Eves, like the evangelicals, I call them the Eves. Like up in Seattle, I had a lot of Eves in my office, and like they're different than the Moes, but they're similar, just a different little flavor of things, you know. And so I agree with you that certain flavors of religious upbringing adds different complexes based on what that religion is specifically focusing and hyperfixating on. Right. What rules are the focus, you know. I think men of the Mormon population have a lot of like sexuality hyper focus because of all of the purity culture talk, you know.
And I would say Mormon men also have their own pernicious thing to unwind complex around superiority and entitlement because they get to have the priesthood that maybe a female coming out of Mormonism may not have to unwind in the same way. Yes, sure, we have our superiority complex around being the special chosen people, but it's different when, you know, for me, there was always a man in between me and God, right? And it's different. So there's even within, you know,
genders and I know. Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking too about like Lisa Diamond's work and talking about safety and social safety, I guess. And as I'm comparing like my religious upbringing and thinking about, well, what's the impetus for being so worthy and being so, you know, righteous? And it's like all these things you're talking about is eternal damnation and hell and gnashing of teeth. But then there's these other parts of my life, right? Like within my therapist community, I'm not worried they're going to send me to hell, a place like called hell. But, you know, there are other social safety consequences, right? If you don't get it right, you could lose your license, you could be canceled, you could be, you know, basically not referred to, right? And granted, sometimes we earn those consequences, you know, as therapists, and that's pretty sad. And yet I think the overlying, it gets amplified, I think, when we come from these religious backgrounds to then take this professional worthiness, you know, kind of identity and how that shows up with that same kind of anxiety. Because I notice my anxiety shows up kind of similarly, but whether it's, you know, oops, I got in trouble at church, or oops, I got in trouble with my mom, or oops, I got in trouble with a fellow therapist, right? And so it's like the same, like, oh no, what is this?
I'm in trouble.
I'm in trouble.
I'm in trouble.
That's your flavor. I'm in trouble. It's not, you're not worthy. For you, it's I'm in trouble.
I'm in trouble.
I'm in trouble.
That would be a good intention. That's the juice. Like the
I agree. I'm in trouble.
Everybody, it's kind of different because worthiness is not right for you. It's I'm in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, the worthiness complex has definitely been there for me, and especially from my, especially my sexual aspects of my identity. But I think at some level, for whatever reason, maybe it was my personality or the fact that I, came up with convert family or something, but maybe the worthiness complex didn't quite hit me quite in the same way, that sometimes I see my clients dealing with that. But the trouble one did, like, I don't want to be in trouble. I want to be able to say my piece. And I know sometimes I say things that are hard, and I don't mind saying things that are hard. And I don't mind people being uncomfortable or talking to me about things. But yeah, if I'm in trouble because now I've done something wrong, then that lands, I guess, in this space, right? Where I'm like, oh no, the sky is falling on Natasha. And I'm like, no, it isn't. And yet there's that feeling, right? And so I think when we're talking about psychedelics, that, I think a lot of talk therapy can give a lot of insight, and I've definitely gotten a lot of insight and self-awareness, but psychedelics can maybe accelerate that insight or
help me notice it. It helps me notice it more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, it helps slow me down, and I can kind of zoom out a little bit and say, look at me doing that pattern again. Like, there I go again, doing the thing. And then it helps me just notice without as much judgment as I think I had in an earlier version of myself.
Yes.
And that's what's been really nice for me, because I can notice a little bit more soft, gentle when I do the human thing of making the mistake.
Right.
And that's felt really nice.
Yeah.
That I can be messy in like my Aimee-ness, and that I don't have to like constantly shrink to that like complex that I have about like, oh shoot, I hurt someone and now I'm going to be in trouble, or they're not going to like me. Like, definitely people liking me was a more motivating thing for me. I was less worried about being in trouble, but like, gosh dang it, people better not think I'm trying to be mean or like something like that, like that, like, oh, good girl. And like people, I want them to pick me too. I'm like the good girl and the pick me girl, like, oh no, but I didn't care as much about getting in trouble because I wasn't as like wired in to be afraid of that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we all have our own different like way of like making ourselves feel small, and it comes back to that deep rooted self-love and just like that unconditional regard for self to say like, I'm going to be fine. Like, somebody had some feedback for me, and shoot, I didn't please them in the way they wanted to be pleased, And I'm like, okay. Like, I've gotten better at kind of rolling with the fact that I won't be such a pleasure to all.
It won't be such a pleasure.
Because like, I want to tell you, it was hard. That was a pattern that's super hard for me, that I was not going to be pleasurable for all people,
That can be another bumper stickers.
Yeah.
You may not find me pleasurable.
You may not find me pleasurable. I try to be pleasurable in life. It's a value of mine. I like pleasure. I like lean in hard to it. I like food. I like sex. I like music, drugs. I'm like, just like, I tease. But I'm like, that indulgence is definitely a part of my personality that's like pleasure. And so if people aren't pleased with me, that did like help. Like, I would collapse before.
Yeah.
And I just noticed myself not collapsing as much as I did before when people find me unpleasurable.
Yeah, and you're more oriented toward your own pleasure rather than everybody else's.
I am. I like that. I am. And I can say that I would say the last years of change for me has been way more orienting to my own pleasure and my own delight and my own, like, but that felt so selfish in an older version of myself, the audacity to like.
Yeah. And now both can belong, your pleasure and somebody else's pleasure, whereas someone else's pleasure just took the center stage.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Or their discomfort. We can flip it too. Because like in this case, it's someone's discomfort for Natasha that dysregulated her, right?
Yeah.
And so like,
I'm assuming, yes.
Maybe. Yeah. We're like, we've got a lot of stories here, but.
Yes. Imagine.
Right. I know. to get the follow-up of how it all went down. Like, what actually was the feedback and how did you respond?
Yes. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not, because I noticed too that depending on the feedback, if I agree with the feedback, I'm like, and I actually do pretty well with that, to some level. Sometimes I can go down a bit of a shame spiral, like, oh, I didn't think of that, or I missed a point.
Or I was fumbly with how I said the thing, and I didn't communicate it as clearly as I want it to be. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've gotten pretty good. I didn't used to be good at this, but I've gotten pretty good at going, you know what, they have a good point. They have a good point, and I probably need to consider that better the next time I do this. Mm-hmm. And I've changed a lot of things in my presentations because of feedback that's actually been very beneficial, even though we would consider it uncomfortable feedback or constructive criticism. I think I have a different reaction when I feel like the feedback is shit.
Yeah, and can you stand on your own and say that feedback is shit?
Yes, and right, like, it's so interesting that I have this. Welcome to Psychotherapy with Natasha today, by the way. But anyway, it's like I feel like it's this mix of like, fuck off, kind of like I said earlier, right? Like, I don't even need to spend my energy on something this ridiculous, that.
Yeah.
And then I feel shame about that.
Because then that's more of like this, like, I'm avoiding, what do you feel shame?
Like, it's because it's like, well, they're a person too, and maybe I need to be more open. It's like, if I feel like if I agree with it, I'm like, yep, I need to be open to it, and I need to, like, incorporate that. If I don't agree with it, I'm kind of like, that's stupid. But then I'm like, I still feel like, but maybe I am missing something that I'm not open to, or maybe even if I do think they're full of shit, they're still a good, they're still a person. And is there some there? I'm telling you, my gears go as shifting. Okay. And so it's not easy for me to dismiss even things that I think are kind of ridiculous, like not evidence-based stuff, or but I'm like, did I respond inappropriately? Did I not respond with grace? Did I dismiss them too readily? Am I missing something?
You want to consider the feedback.
Yeah. So either
with the time limit. With the time limit, Natasha. I think this is like a good intervention for you to say, hey, I ruminate longer than I probably need to on some of the feedback of the audience. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear, because you're not, Natasha, you've modeled to me through your whole career. You're not somebody that's not going to sit in the conversation of difficult conversations to say, let's talk about the ethics or talk about the nuance or the complicatedness of anything in front of you, Yeah. So I think that you do a beautiful job of that.
Well, thank you.
And set a time limit.
And set a time limit. And call my friends and gripe.
Yeah. And dump out to us.
Exactly. And it might just be too that it's taken her some time to get back. Gosh, I can remember when you were talking about that. I'm like, even as a kid, sometimes you'd get in trouble, right? And, my mom would say to me, wait till your father gets home. And that was a hard time to wait, punishment comes down, and how to sit with that nervous system. And so I think that could also be part of it too, right?
Mm-hmm. Like you're waiting to see what is it. And in the meantime, you're creating all these potential scenarios. And it's definitely interesting how something so simple can derail us. And I think most of us are living these kinds of realities on the daily, which is why I want to talk about it, to make it very normalized. And also within this intersection of what we're talking about, to wrap up we are really talking about the benefit of psychedelics in relation to, in particular, lingering patterns. Lingering
patterns. Do you have to let it linger? Do you have to? Do you have to? Do you have to let it linger? And sometimes it does. Sorry, I break out into song a lot. But the lingering patterns.
I love the breaking out to song.
I'm like a DJ, but just I have to. Too bad I don't have a beautiful singing voice. But I would just say the lingering patterns are beautiful to notice, and what an opportunity we have to become something new. a lot. We get to have a series of death and rebirths over and over again. We get to say, oh, I was a good Mormon girl and I had a lot of pick me, but no, I'm a audacious girl and I'm a witch. Like, you know, and like I get to decide, like, hey, this is my conscious creation, and like I want to be in the vibration of my beautiful life force, and I don't have to live to be a pleasure to anybody except my own life, you know. And that has been a beautiful embodiment. That's been a beautiful different dance that I had to change the stance on, and I still sometimes slip up in my old patterns, but I can notice them easier and more gently and more softly and without such harsh judgments than I did before. And I can definitely testify of that.
There you go.
Good job, Aim.
Thanks for listening, you know. Any last thoughts from you, Rossi?
Yeah, something that was coming up for me earlier is just this idea of, I want to just say the courage it takes to do this kind of work for anybody who's really trying to self-confront around how they show up in relationship, how they respond to people, trying to show up well, trying to take feedback, right? Like it's quite a dance to be a human today, right? And being in relationship with others, right? And this dance of how do I stay in relationship with people, right? While also not self-betraying, right? Because sometimes that story is we must self-betray and be obedient in order to be in relationship with people. And so this is the dance we're kind of talking about, which is how do I show up in coherent alignment when I show up in integrity with myself while also doing right by others, is a lifelong Zen koan that we can live into. Because as soon as we start to please the crowd, there is a sense of guilt that will show up that the soul kind of says, hey, you're out of alignment with me. Like, this is not who you are, right? The soul says differently, right? And so how do we do that dance? Like I think we're all talking about, whether it's long-term partnership or friends or whatever it is, how do we do that? And I think it just wanted to say, like, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to go to therapy, to look at yourself, to work with these deeper medicines. And it's not easy and it's not fast. I think sometimes there's this idea that like psychedelics are the fast food of healing. And well, they'll get the order out to you quick, but the work then begins after you come down off of the trip, you know, and sometimes it's years-long integration, you know, and it can help us with those new perspectives. But yeah, I just want to you know, 3 cheers to anyone out here really doing this work, because it's not for the faint of heart.
No.
And it takes a lot of resilience to look at yourself. So good job, guys.
Yeah.
Good job, all of us. Good job, people listening on this podcast. Way to go.
That's right. We're all helping model for each other, you know, what these things can look like and feel like. So thank you so much for spending the time on the podcast as we have been doing. 2, just for a lot of moral support and love that I always feel from the two of you anyway. And then 3, just the whole thinking about this through this clinical lens, right? That we're really interested in coming to the table. So thank you for thinking through this with me in a personal story that also has a lot of clinical implications. So, and thank you all who are listening. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what kinds of topics you'd like for us to cover in this intersection of psychedelics and mental health. What things you are excited about, or what things you're worried about, or what things you don't know about, or what kind of experiences you've had. So by all means, drop some comments in the threads of wherever you're listening to this, or email us directly, contact us directly. And again, another reminder about our November 7th training, which is going to be, I want to tell the time. Let's see, it's going to be from 9 in the morning to noon p.m. in Mountain Standard Time. And we will have an in-person option and also an online option for those who want to come. And if you run a group practice or want to attend with 3 or more colleagues, I can send you a group code as well to give you a bit of a discount. So, and if you're part of the Mormon Mental Health Association, you get a little bit of a discount. So go on to your, just reach out to me if if you have any of those things. But it's not too, I don't think we charge too much. It's fairly affordable. And like Aimee have reminded us, let's get CEs that are fun, not just always dry. And, and instead of just checking the boxes, let's check the boxes in a way that we really enjoy. So, all right, everyone, have a great night. Until
Thank
next
you.
time.
Love being here.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Natasha Helfer podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can also find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The information shared on this program is informational and should not be considered therapy. This podcast addresses many topics around mental health and sexuality and may not be suitable for minors. Some topics may elicit a trigger or emotional response, so please care for yourself accordingly. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes is by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening.
There is a place where time slows to nature's pace, and there is space there to find yourself in her embrace. Some places should be left alone. Now tishki say the so we can always go to the homeland of the heart. Years of our human history etched on her canyon walls, alongside Earth's mysteries. Some places should be left alone. Now tishki shade so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart. Deep in our cities, we sleep without her stars, yet still her presence sustains us from afar. Some places should be left alone. Now tishki shade so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the home